beginning of the search. And starting in verse 12, and he says, chapter 1, verse 12, he says, I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. And so, oops. Let me get caught up here. So we see a searching observation. And so we know that Solomon, he had great wisdom. He had greater wisdom more than any person, more than any before him. And it was that same wisdom that led him to understand that there were even mysteries of life that were beyond his comprehension. There was things even he did not understand with his great wisdom. And having that wisdom to understand, and by that same wisdom, he would set his heart to seek the answers to the questions that he has. You know, it says, I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under the heaven. You know, he says he seeks to search all things that are done under the heaven. And that, in this context, he's kind of meaning the sky, or he's talking about all things that are done on earth. And he has these questions of life, and he's seeking out in his heart to ask questions. And do you have something, Brother Paul? But he's set in his heart. He already decided in his heart that he was fully determined that he was going to seek answers to these questions he has.
The thing I noticed right off the bat here is, he says, I gave my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom concerning all things.
Yep.
This is how a new Christian's heart should be when they give their heart to the Lord. They should be seeking out God's word, finding out what God wants from them, and putting it into their heart to live it.
Yep. Yep. Sometimes we kind of halfway do it. Yep. And I don't know why I'm going to kind of chase that a little bit. Not even new Christians, even older Christians. Amen. You know, we all ought to be searching all things. You know, sometimes we only search certain things or halfway, but
several months ago, when I taught before over at Cornerstone, I searched out the word believe. And that's what it means, is to dig deep, understanding what is in what you're doing.
Yeah.
You got to really dig deep. It's not just a surface belief. It goes deeper. And like his does. It says, into his heart, he searched it out.
Yep. Yep. And going forward here, we see that this verse here, 13, it kind of begins to set the stage for the book, because as King Solomon, he begins to search, we kind of start to see the following is what he finds along his search. And for anyone that's read this book, I almost kind of look at it as at a way as, does curiosity end up killing the cat, kind of, Solomon goes on this search for answers for life's questions, but is what he finds the answer that he thought he was going to find. And if you read it, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But as we continue, he begins to share the answers he finds to his questions. And he says there in verse 13, the end of that verse, he says, this sore travail hath God given to the sons of the man to be exercised therewith. So before telling us what it is he finds, before telling us these answers, he refers to it as a sore travail. That would be like a painful task or a painful burden. And so he automatically says what he finds is not a good thing. It's a sore travail that's been given by God. You know, it's this terrible thing that's been given to humanity by God to be afflicted with. And I'm going to come back to that here in a little bit. But he goes on to say in verse 14 that he's seen all the works that are done under the sun. And he says, behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. You know, this sore travail that's given by God is all these works that's done every day under the sun, repeatedly every day with no end. And he says the final result of it is vanity. I mean, it's meaningless. It has no purpose. All done under the sun has no purpose. It's vexation of spirit, and that's similar to saying he's chasing after the wind. You know, he's chasing nothing. He's not going to catch what he's chasing for, and it leaves you weary and dissatisfied. He says these laborings under the sun are vexation of spirit. And then I want to come back, because this is where I want to stay for a moment, is this almost seems like a cruel system created by God, right? I mean, this laboring under the sun, you know, this repetitive, this vain repetition of laboring under the sun every day. It almost seems like a cruel system, but it's not. It's actually evidence of his great love and mercy. You know, Solomon's talking about works done under the sun, but any works that you do for the kingdom of heaven is beyond anything on earth. God deliberately built this system of meaningless and put a desire, there's an empty void in every one of us that leaves us having a desire, and he put that in each one of us so that we must seek after him, that we desire to be filled with his grace, with his mercy, with his love and his presence. You know, if we found complete satisfaction in anything else on this earth, you know, if it was one thing, what need would we have for a God?
That's right.
You know, what need would we have for a God that can fill that void? You know, take maybe one hobby you had for an example, and say you found complete satisfaction. Say you found that fulfillment that you got from salvation. Why would you go to salvation? Why would you seek God? And beyond that, how would God be omnipotent? How would he be all-powerful? How would he even be the God that he is if there was anything else that measured up to him?
That's right.
If there was anything else that filled that void within us, that was created in us,
That's right. Yeah.
why would we need a God? How would God be God?
Amen.
God could not be God if we were not totally reliant upon him.
Yeah. Thank you, Lord.
He designed us to have that need of complete reliance on him.
Yes. Amen.
And that's why Solomon says, upon this search, that everything under the sun is vanity.
Yep.
It has no purpose. It's meaningless. Anything done under the sun, anything done on earth has no purpose.
Yep.
And he says also in verse 15, says, that which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. In other words, what he's saying there is it cannot be fixed. You know, what Solomon now knows can never be unknown. You know, he's found the answers, and that's what I meant earlier is what he sought to find. Is that what he was expecting to find?
Amen.
You know, but it is what it is. He talks about straightening that which is crooked. It's made crooked. It cannot be straightened. You know, we talking about that void, you know, that's in us, that we need, that we seek, that desire that we have.
Yes.
You know, that's a system that wasn't designed to be fixed. That was a system created by God for a purpose. You know, if we try to fix it, it's vanity. That which is crooked cannot be straightened. That which is wanting cannot be numbered. We cannot change what God has made.
Amen.
And then we see a sobering reflection. And he says, starting in verse 16 through 18, he says, I communed with mine own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yeah, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge, and I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is vexation of spirit. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow.
Yeah.
So, there's a problem that I saw here in verse 16. He says he communed with his heart. You know, he looked inward for the answers. You know, I communed with my own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and I've gotten more wisdom, and my heart had great experience of wisdom and all. He looked within himself, his own wisdom and his own knowledge, to try to find the answers to his questions.
Help him, Lord.
You know, he even acquaints it with madness and folly. The same wisdom that he's looking for answers, his own wisdom, he acquaints that with. He says, I've also obtained madness and folly. You know, that folly means foolishness or lack of common sense. And, you know, these questions that we often have, you know, and I'm sure we've all had questions that we ponder, and we probably some of us don't think about it because, you know, we don't want to know the answer. You know, we just want to have faith. But these questions that we often found or have, you know, they're not found in our own understanding, but they're found in he who is greater than us. You know, they're found in faith in Christ.
Yep.
And Solomon says, I perceive that this also, looking within himself, is vexation of spirit. He's saying it's pointless. It's pointless to try to search out the answer for yourself. It's pointless to try to find it. And he says in verse 18, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increases sorrow. You know, the more the preacher understood life under the sun, the greater the despair. And the more he learned, the more he realized what he didn't know, and the more he knew life's sorrows.
Yep.
You know, life under the sun is life without God. You know, it's talking about if a person who does not know God, or living a life with no thought given to God, or living a life for yourself, so to speak. And it's nothing more than merely just under the sun.
Yep.
You know, it's nothing more than just vain repetitions of every day. In this instance right here, he's talking about seeking the answers. We're going to see how he goes through this whole search, but he finds it to be just vanity, to be meaningless.
Yeah.
But if we ever get to that point, you know, that we're not under the sun, you know.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna take a little bit different look.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Verse 13, we can see how he sought out his heart to seek after righteousness, seek after God. Then verse 16, I communed with my own heart. In other words, he's saying as he's found out more about what God is, who God is, what God wants from him, from his word, he's searching his heart, rating himself as to how do I rate up? Where do I fall short?
Right.
How can I change these things in my life?
Yep.
But when we do that, we need to be in touch with God on that personal level, day to day, to help us to grow in him.
Yep.
And I think like you said there, he's saying you can't depend on your own knowledge or worldly knowledge.
That's
Yeah.
It has to be God.
Yep.
That's what you were saying.
It'll leave you with a vexed spirit.
That's right, amen.
The application says you don't have to be a student of philosophy to have wondered about the meaning of life. Solomon demonstrated that this was not a problem with which only modern man has grappled,